welcome everyone to Forefront's Introduction to Foundation Directory Online Essential. This is a new presentation for us. Candid, the publishers who make Foundation Directory Online, have also made access to Foundation Directory Online Essential version free to access for people because of all of the considerations about social distancing and being in public at this time. And so we really wanted to just have a moment where we can go over kind of what is in that database, a little bit of what's different about it from the regular Foundation Directory Online and how you access it and what to kind of do with it. All right, so first though, I will talk just a little bit about Forefront in case there is anyone here who is unaware at all. Forefront is Illinois' statewide membership organization for operating nonprofits, foundations, advisors, and other allies of the social sector. We try to provide education, webinars, workshops, that sort of thing, as well as advocacy in government and other types of collective action and facilitation for our members and for the nonprofit sector as a whole. Welcome to those just joining. I was just introducing Forefront, so you have not missed anything as of yet. I will mention that if you have questions at any point, or if there is anything that technically goes wrong with this presentation, please feel free to unmute yourselves and say so, or to put it in the chat for me. That will be great. Right, so the Forefront Library. We are what is known in library circles as a special library. This means our collection is specialized, in our case, focusing on the nonprofit sector. That is what all of our books, all of our databases are focused toward. This is different from, say, a public library that has very broad sort of interests in serving an entire community in a variety of ways, or a school library that is focused on supporting the mission and programs that are at the school. We are also a funding information network partner through Candid. Candid are the people who publish Foundation Directory Online and the essential version that we're going over today. Part of being one of their FIN partners, the Funding Information Network, is that we provide trainings on some of their materials, we have access to their databases, and we can point you towards things through some of their sites. One site I like mentioning of theirs in particular is GrantSpace. You'll see the URL there on the screen that I'm sharing. And again, if anything is not being shared when I say it is, please let me know. Grantspace.org. You can create a free profile there and look at their articles. You can sign up for some of their webinars. Some of them are fee-based, but others are free. And also see some sample documents. So if you wanted to look at kind of parts of a grant proposal or some of the other kind of documentation that can go into that, you can see a few examples on their website there at GrantSpace. So unfortunately, the Forefront Library is online only at this time. Our location at 200 West Madison Street is one I have not yet visited because we just moved earlier this year. And so I have not gotten a chance to unpack our books. I have not seen my desk. It is all downtown, far away from me right now. So we are online only. That means that some of the services we've offered in the past that have been in person, we can't do at this time. If you are with a Forefront member organization, please feel free to contact us via email. We can set up Zoom calls if you want to talk through some things. And of course, you can make research requests through email that we will fill while we're working from home and send you results. We are trying to work on some appointments for people who are non-members, basically to go over some of the resources we have that are publicly available, like Foundation Directory Online Essential. But that is still kind of in the works at this time. Right, so once we finish talking about FDO Essential, you should be able to explain what it is, know what you need to know before searching a database, be able to search it on kind of a project-based terms so that you can kind of describe what it is you're doing and see what funders have interests in that area or have funded similar things in the past. Be able to look at the resulting list of grant makers and kind of evaluate them for whether or not they are a great fit for your organization. and identify options for how you can access this database and get help with it. So, kind of jumping right into some of the technical details, Foundation Directory Online Essential has the same number of foundation profiles as its professional counterpart. There are over 220,000 funder profiles in it. These include information about their past giving in the form of kind of trend maps, links to their 990s, information that's been gathered about their application process, and it is updated on a daily basis. Not everything gets updated. It's a very rolling kind of process. When we look at the actual database, I'll show you where to check for when something has been last updated, so you can see when that particular page has been touched. So, sources, where it gets its information from. There are a wide variety of them. They include, of course, some of the things you would generally think of, grantmakers' websites if they have them, any kind of annual reports that are found online, any kind of communications about the organization, federal government grants that have been given to them, because you can draw information from what they've received there, direct reporting from grantmakers. If you happen to be associated with a foundation, Foundation Directory Online has a process of e-reporting where you can upload the grant data from your organization directly. So that way you can be transparent on a kind of an immediate basis, and folks can see your priorities as they change and don't have to wait for the delay of a 990 being filed and it being uploaded, and Candid being able to get that from the IRS database and being able to upload it to their information, which is a whole process that takes quite some time. That is why you'll frequently see kind of a delay on what the most recent things are in the database versus what kind of period of time we are in right now. So if you are with or know people with foundations, I highly recommend the e-reporting process. It is just kind of great for getting more information that is more current and kind of more up to the moment. And if you're really curious about other places that they get their information, especially the bits of it that are not United States centric, you can check out their website there, the candid.org, use our data. You can also kind of just Google Candid data sources, Candid Foundation Directory Online data sources, and you'll find the page as well. So before you get into a database, you want to know what it is you need to know, kind of doing your homework sort of things. So the main questions to consider are, of course, who are you serving? Who is your community? Who are the people who are going to benefit from your organization's services? Have a really good idea about who they are so that you can communicate that to potential funders. Where are they? Where are you located? Especially community foundations, of course, have a focus on a particular area. And even a lot of private and family foundations are frequently focused on where they're from. So kind of that geographic location is extremely important. If you look at last year's Giving in Illinois report, the vast majority of foundations that are in Illinois give money in Illinois. A lot of money that is in a state stays within the state. So it can be really helpful to kind of look at where you are and look at organizations that are interested in kind of their local area. And what exactly are you doing for the people you are serving? A lot of grant funding is done kind of on a project-based type of thing, so that you can see what people are interested in. If they do after-school programs, if they do, help for the arts, any of those sorts of things, and knowing what it is that you're doing that is different, that is unique, that is kind of the hook about your organization. All of those are kind of the things to keep in mind when you're getting ready to search the database. So we, of course, are going to do a slightly hands-on thing where I will do actually a live search so people can see it. But first we'll go through a few screenshots to kind of show what that looks like. So you can, when you get into the database, do kind of a basic Google search. You can just type in what it is you do, health after school program for low-income children in Georgia. However, all of the information in Foundation Directory Online, both the professional and essential version, is indexed under its own particular set of terms. And so this means that it will take what you put in here in your kind of Google search and will translate it into its set of terms. And that can have kind of mixed results depending on how specific you were and what it can kind of assume. Machine logic and machine learning can have a ways to go. So you can do it this way. However, we frequently um, advise that you click this link here that says advanced search and filters and actually use all of the boxes. Now, you do not have to fill in all of them. This is just giving you options. The top 3 are the ones that are most frequently used. So you can search the subject area. So if you're doing anything that is kind of after school or with children in kind of a learning environment but that isn't in school, the term they have in the database is out of school learning, which may or may not be super familiar to everyone. Geographic focus here is where you are doing your work. So if you are helping people in Indiana, you would put Indiana, even if your organization physically was located in Chicago. So if you're doing your work in Chicago, you can put in Chicago. You can be very specific here, or you can get very broad. However, I will say the broader you get, the more negative results you're going to end up finding. Because you can put cities, you can put counties, you can put states, you can put regions, you can put in the United States. However, if you search the United States, it will return funders that fund anywhere in the United States. So it can return people who fund nationally, but it can also return people who fund only in Maine, because Maine is in the United States. So it tends to be better to try to be specific first and only kind of broaden that out if you're not really seeing any results. Because it could be that there are organizations that say, or that want to fund the state of Illinois and just have not funded in your particular county yet. So if you search your county, you won't find anything, but if you search the state, you will. And you can still kind of contact that funder on the basis of the fact that they want to be a statewide funder, and you're now providing them with an opportunity to actually broaden their reach as well. Population served, that is kind of self-explanatory. It's the group of people you are working with. You can leave that box entirely blank if you are working with an entire community, if you're doing something for everybody in a group, in like a neighborhood or an area. But if you are working specifically with veterans, if all of your work is with children, if you are working only with immigrants, then you might search that box. In fact, if you're doing a lot of different things with that particular group, like if you're providing all kinds of informational and informational sources, resources to immigrants, you might just search immigrants in the population served box and leave the subject area box blank instead, to kind of look at people who are working with that group, regardless of what type of work they're doing. But those are kind of the big 3 on boxes to search. So if you search something like that, like the search I put together with out of school learning in Chicago with girls, came back with 39 potential grant makers. You'll note the gray boxes, those are columns that are only available in the professional version. If you are associated with a Forefront member organization, feel free to email the library and we can search the professional version for you and send you some results. If you want to see actual grant details. And you can also, of course, see 990s. They do keyword searching for their 990s, so you can often get way more results there than are potentially going to be accurate because it might have just searched the word out everywhere. And so you've gotten a lot of results that may not line up with the 39 grant makers who have actually given something in these areas. Right, so once you have kind of that list of results, those 39 potential grant makers, you're going to look through them and you're going to kind of ask yourself as you go through them, do you meet their requirements? There's a section in each profile that will talk about their giving limitations, their kind of mission statements. So you can kind of look at what they're prioritizing and think about where your organization is and see how those kind of match. Is your mission or goal a priority for them? Is this something that they did once 5 years ago and haven't done since and isn't in their like trend map where it shows kind of their top 10 subject areas? Then even though they have a little history with it, it might not be the best of it for you. So you might want to start elsewhere first. And finally, do you know anyone associated with this funder? There is a section that has who's who, so it is often a great kind of relationship builder if you know somebody to kind of introduce you to the organization more broadly, or if someone on your board or anyone who works at your organization has any kind of contact there. Those are always kind of very useful steps. So, as I mentioned, the top of each profile is their trend charts. You'll have the name of the organization. Underneath is their website if they have one. I believe it's still something like 70% of family foundations don't have any kind of web presence. So especially smaller foundations, there's a good chance they won't have a website, which the more time moves on, the stranger that statement feels to me. We'll probably see it switch eventually. But if they have a website, it will be there right at the top. And then you'll have these basic maps that will talk a little bit about what the organization does. These main subject areas they fund, where they have funded, and what size their grants generally are. So again, on that kind of evaluating them, if your subject area, if like the broad category of your subject area isn't in their kind of top, then that might be a point where they're going to be lower down your priority list. The darker a state is on the state's map for where they're funding, the more they have funded there. So you'll see Lloyd Fry funded most in Illinois, has done a fair amount in New York as well, and I believe that's Massachusetts. California has done a bit in Kentucky and Georgia, but if you were in Georgia, you might put them lower down on the priority list as well because they have not done much funding there. And of course, if you're literally anywhere else in the country, you'd probably put them very low priority because they have not funded in, say, New Mexico at all. So the next section of a profile is their about us, their purpose, their background, their program areas. So you can kind of get a really good sense of what the organization is about, what they believe, what their main priorities that they state are. Then they're giving limitations in the application section. This can have information on an open RFP if there's been information about one available to candid. That is not an exhaustive sort of resource. So if you don't see one there, that doesn't mean that they're not accepting applications or not accepting proposals at all. It just means that it's not available publicly in a way that has been uploaded to this particular database. However, this does have information about what they want to see, what they think your initial contact should be for them, board meeting dates if they're available, deadlines if they have specific ones for different things. They mentioned that what they want you to put in kind of your letter of interest to send to them. So there's all kinds of information that can be there about what they want to see in the application process. And then also they're giving limitations. They mention here that they generally just give to Chicago. We note from that map that it's not the only place they give, that there are several other states they have given in, but their stated thing is generally Chicago. Then they tell you no support for medical research, for religious purposes, for government bodies. So you can always kind of look at giving limitations to see if your project kind of falls specifically in things that they do not do so that you can kind of cross them off your list of possibilities. Then, as mentioned, who's who? Who works there? Who are some of these people? Sometimes there will be LinkedIn icons next to a name. Occasionally, if they have linked those together. If you see a LinkedIn icon, you can, of course, click it to see their LinkedIn profile. But otherwise, you will get their names here on some of the staff, some of the officers for an organization. So you can kind of see if you know anyone, if anyone on your board knows anyone, all of those kind of steps about trying to build a relationship with an organization. Right, so other things you can do when searching. Instead of using this bar to do kind of a Google search, you can search for a particular organization if you want to look for one by name. Seems pretty straightforward. You can do that if you just want to find that one particular profile. You can also search for a person instead of organization. So if you know somebody who you're sure is on a board or staff for an organization, but you're having a little trouble, say, remembering how to spell the foundation's name, you can try looking at the person instead. This can be a little hit or miss just because a lot of people in the world have very similar names. So it can be a little tricky to make sure you're looking for the right person. But you can definitely give that a go if you know somebody and want to kind of see who they're associated with and what that foundation's rules are. Now, where you can access FDO. The essential version, basically anywhere. If you go to the Forefront Library website, which is just library.myforefront.org, you will see a little box that says to email us for access. So if you just click that, you can get the link for it. I'm also going to pop the link into the chat right at the moment so that if anybody wants to take a look right now, they can. It's a very ugly link when I paste it out like that. But you should be able to see that. So if anybody kind of wants to hop on that immediately, you can certainly do so if you're on a computer at home. And again, if you are within 50 miles of Forefront, you can email us to get the link. If you are very far away, if I happen to have anybody here who's out of state, Candid is trying to put people in touch with the FINs, the Funding Information Network partners who are closest to them. So you can go to Candid's website. I'll actually also toss that link into the chat. They are candid.org/find us. And that will take you to a map of all of the Funding Information Network partners. Basically, all of them are offering access to Foundation Directory Online Essential to people who are near them. So if there's somebody closer to you, you can certainly check with them for a link as well. Or if you are going to use the link I just pasted, but you know people who are farther away, if you have kind of an organization, a networking event where you're talking to people who are in other states, feel free to tell them to go to candid.org/find us and contact their closest FIN to get Foundation Directory Online Essentials access. So that's really going to be the best avenue for them. You can also use that map to see if there's anybody near you who has reopened physically. Like I said, Forefront, we are physically closed. I am working from home, hence my lovely fake library background. But I know some of the other FINs, the other Funding Information Network partners, are public libraries and have opened at least on limited capacity. So especially if you're in some of the suburbs of Chicago, you might use that candid.org/find us link to see if there's anyone near you who has opened back up. Because that way you could go in and could actually use Foundation Directory Online Professional yourself in person. I hope that's not kind of confusing to try to set up as two different things. Foundation Directory Online Essential, you can get a link from any of the FINs to access from home. Foundation Directory Online Professional is something that if you're a Forefront member, you can email the library about and we will do research for you and send you results. Or if you are not a Forefront member, you can try to find another FIN that is open so you can visit them in person. But anyway, Foundation Directory Online Essential, if you want to explore what I've just been showing you, you can access it from anywhere with that long, ugly link I put in the chat. Help with it. So Candid has a quick guide for Foundation Directory Online. Some of it will be focused on the professional version and is not things that are accessible in Essential, but a lot of it is. You can take a look at that. Candid also has a YouTube channel with a lot of videos about their various resources, including Foundation Directory Online. And Forefront, we have a YouTube channel with videos about not only library resources, but also all kinds of other workshops and things we have done. So you can probably find things of interest there, even if only one or two of them are specific to Foundation Directory Online. Right, and of course, you're welcome to contact the library if you have questions. If you are part of a member organization, please email us research requests. You can use that first email there, the member411@myforefront.org, to contact us about doing remote research for our Forefront members. If you're not, if you lose this link and need to get it again, you can email library@myforefront.org and we will send you another link to Essential. Yes, I can probably do that. Katie asked if I could put those links in the chat. I can certainly do that. Just give me a moment so I can type them all out. So member411@myforefront.org is the email address for members to request remote research assistance. So that's that one. Library@myforefront.org is our general information box. So if you lose the Essential link, feel free to send us a note through that and I can send it to you again. And library.myforefront.org is just the library's main page. You can see anything we have publicly available there and any kind of other information that the library is sharing right now. All right, so now let me switch my screen sharing so that I can show you guys the actual database. So let's change this to that. All right, so hopefully you can now see my screen with the database on it. I'm going to let that sit there for a moment. If you can see Foundation Directory Online Essential, or if you can't, either way, let me know in the chat. And as soon as I have some kind of confirmation, I will do an actual live search for people to see. All right, are people seeing my screen? Yes, great. Okay, thank you, Katie. Just want to make sure before I just started chattering about a search that no one could see but me. Right, so this is what you'll see. Let me actually move that off of there so you can see the whole screen. So this is Foundation Directory Online Essential, is what you would see if you click that the long ugly link I had sent in the chat. Hopefully, if you don't, let me know about that. So like I said, you can type in a basic search here if you want. We generally recommend doing an advanced search first. Again, you can search for a specific organization if you want. You can search for a specific person if you want. But generally, people are kind of interested in a broader search than that. So if you click into the subject area box, you will see this huge drop-down menu. So anything that has this little downward pointing caret expands out. Some of these can get very specific. So you can start with a very specific subject if you want, or you can start with a very broad subject. That is up to you. You can also just kind of browse through them to see what you want. One last link for me to put into the search. If anyone wants to see all of these terms in a way that's a little easier to browse than just a drop-down menu, you can go to taxonomy.candid.org and you can actually see all of these terms and kind of their various trees and see what all of them mean, because you can actually see the definitions the database has for each of them. And that's just at the taxonomy.candid.org. All right, so to give ourselves, we're going to give ourselves a nice broad search. We will just pick arts and culture. You'll note when I pick a broad topic, it automatically selects everything underneath it. If you don't want to do that, you will have to do category by category. Broad categories always select everything underneath them. All right. So with geographic focus, this is one where you do have to type in, but as you start typing, it'll start giving you suggestions. Again, population served is another one where you can browse, but we will leave that one blank for the moment. And as I mentioned, you do not have to use all of the boxes, so I don't need to use organization name unless I want to look for one specific organization. And what it does in arts and culture. Location is generally where the grant maker is located. So if you wanted to look at arts and culture grants that were given by organizations located in Chicago, you can put Chicago there. And Husu, like I said, is people. If you want to be very specific, you can use some of the filters that showed up in the additional filter section. These are often used after you've done one initial search, just to kind of narrow things down, because we are going to get a pretty broad set of results from the search I'm doing right at this moment. Support strategy is generally how you're doing your work. Are you looking for general support? Are you looking to help buy a building? What kind of specific thing are you doing? Transaction type isn't used much. It is the kind of grant, and most people generally aren't interested in narrowing that down. unless you're specifically looking for something like an in-kind donation. Organization type, if you wanted to look at just family foundations, you could do that. If you wanted to just look at community foundations or any kind of other specific type of foundation, you could. That again, not one that is frequently used unless you're just somebody who is very interested in kind of building a list of all family foundations in an area. EIN is basically organization name, but more specific. If you have an organization's EIN, you can look them up very quickly. Keyword, be very careful about keyword searches. If you are looking for something and your work doesn't seem to fall into any of these subject area or population or support strategy buckets very easily, you can try to use keyword. However, keyword can give you a lot of false positives. The best example I've seen of this is I watched a demonstration of this database, and our presenter searched the word cheese as a keyword, and they got some results. One of them was in the subject area of transportation, because it turned out that particular grant was for maintenance of a highway that had cheese in its name. And so that was a word that was in the description of the grant, and thus it came up in a keyword search. So keyword search can give you very misleading results. However, it has worked pretty well for some people who are looking for very specific things. Diaper services have turned up pretty decently there, as has pickleball. The one time somebody asked me to try that as a keyword. So if you have something that is unique to your work and it's not really showing up well in the other buckets, give it a try. Just be warned that it may give you some stuff that is not related to your topic at all. Then there are the two slider bars. So years are how recently an organization has given a grant. So if you want to make sure that it is something that is a recent priority for them, you can narrow that down. This only goes back as far as 2003, so you can't get super historical on data. And also, when you are picking your range, generally give it at least a few years. As I mentioned before, with the whole process for organizations that aren't e-reporters, for information to get into the database, generally a foundation has to file its 990 to the IRS. The IRS has to process it and put it on their publicly accessible database. Candid has to download it from there and then has to upload the information to their database, which is a multi-step sort of process and can take rather a lot of time. So don't narrow things down to just 2020 and expect to see practically anything. Now, Candid has done a couple of projects very recently where they have tried to get more self-reported information, especially with a lot of the response to both the COVID-19 crisis and with the response to for racial equity after the events surrounding George Floyd's death. They were trying to get more information in the moment about what foundations were doing as it was happening, rather than not being able to really know about it until a year or two later. So there is some very recent data, especially around those kind of two broad subject areas for things relating to COVID-19 response and relating to racial equity. Candid also has specific pages on those topics too, as does Forefront. We have an entire page on COVID-19 resources. So they are trying to kind of increase the amount of self-reporting that they get from foundations to increase kind of more recent data. But again, if you're doing something that isn't one of those kind of currently very topical searches, you definitely want to give it a few years so that you can see a range of responses. Then grant amount. If you're looking for grants of a certain size, this is a slider bar where you definitely want to actually click on the numbers and type though, because you'll see as I move it very slightly, it is one with a very large range. It runs initially from 0 to 10 billion. So it has far too much sensitivity. So if you wanted to give it a minimum amount, just type on it, just click on the number and type. Okay, so if we do this search, you'll note we have gotten over 1,600 grant makers as possibilities, which is far too many to go through. If this was a search you were starting to do, you would probably go back up to your terms and try to be a little more specific. Maybe you have a population you're working with. Perhaps arts and culture is really broad and you're actually working with museums. Something like that, where you might narrow it down in some way. Perhaps you want to make sure that it's people who are, offering technical assistance sort of support. There are a number of ways to break that down further if you wanted to rerun it. But you can also browse the list of the ones who have given the most grants in the broad topic if you want. So your results will have the grant maker's name, where they're located, uh, total assets and total giving are drawn from the most recent 990 that Candid has on file. So those are from their actual tax document. Amount funded is going to be the math on everything they have funded related to the search we just did. So this is everything that is supposed to be an arts and culture related thing in Chicago from the years of 2015 to 2020. It should be this amount over this many grants. So the grant count is also based on the search you just did. Now, once you are looking at this grant maker list, you can narrow it down in a few ways as well. If you wanted to look at organizations of a certain size, you can narrow it by assets, you can narrow it by total giving. You can also, over here, there's this very important checkbox. It says exclude grant makers not accepting applications. So if you want to remove anybody who says that they don't take unsolicited proposals, who says they only give to pre-selected organizations, you would click the box. Now, the reason it is back here as a choice rather than being up here in the broad search is that Candid, who makes this database, wants people to at least have a glimpse of the whole search. Because since networking is such a huge piece of the fundraising process, getting at least a look at a name so that you might look and see if you do know anyone, look and see if you have any ties to organization, look and see if there is a relationship that you already have or that can be built there, just so that you're not out of hand, never see that opportunity. But if you want to narrow things down, or if you are not doing long-term planning at the moment, you're looking for people who are available very soon, check the box. It will then filter all of those out, and you'll note that that was a lot. It is frequently a very large change. Usually not quite that large. Apparently, arts and culture is an area where there are rather a lot of people who only give to pre-selected organizations. You'll note that took it from 1,600 to 450. Right, so now you have kind of a much smaller list, still probably too big for anyone to go through. But again, you can narrow it down if you wanted, or you can kind of browse some of the biggest contributors if you just wanted to see them. So let's bring up the top result here and look at their profile. I always right click and open a new tab just to save my search in one tab so that I don't lose it. So as I mentioned, they have last updated dates. So you'll note that this profile was last updated in June and their grants information was last updated in August because they are an e-grant reporter. So the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation does actually submit grants through the e-reporting process I was mentioning, which is great because you'll note they also are someone who does not have a website listed. So it is very nice that they do connect in this way. Right, so their trend maps, you'll note their subject areas, environment and arts and culture being kind of the top two. So arts and culture is generally a big priority of theirs. The size of their grants, they seem to have, two kind of priorities there. Ones that are under $5,000 and ones in the $10,000 to $25,000 range are kind of their top two sets of grants, it looks like. Where they're giving, again, darker the state, the more that is given there. So you'll note that Illinois, where they have given over the last 5 years 913 grants to 271 recipients, and South Carolina tend to be kind of the darkest, with several other states being, dark-ish, and then some that have no information where they have apparently never given. Their funding interests, these are terms from the database that are pulled from the grant details that are known about the organization. Their About Them section, where it has their mission and their program areas. All their funders to consider. So this is a box that is based on an algorithm that the database runs. So these are ones that the computer feels are very similar to this organization overall. So if you were doing a search and we're only getting a very few results, but a couple of them were extremely good matches, this might be a box to look at to see what other organizations the database is suggesting to you, in case there were ones that also were pretty good, but for some reason had not come up in the initial search. Then what I tend to consider possibly the most useful bit of the entire profile, their applications RFP section. So you'll note what they require about things, their initial approach. They want a telephone or email prior to applying online. So they want a quick kind of check with you, probably to make sure that, you're not wasting your time by applying if things aren't actually going to be even remotely a good fit. Then they're giving limitations. They give primarily in Chicago and the low country area of South Carolina. So map accurately reflects where their two main areas of priority are. But again, if we scroll back up and look at the map, you'll note that's not the only place. So it is often good to kind of see where they have actually given based on those maps, in addition to where they say they generally give, just on kind of how that works for chances. Financials, if you wanted to see a 990, you can get those to pop up for you in PDF form there. Who's who, so you can see kind of their people as well. Communications is just information that Candid has generally about the organization. So it's kind of various articles that are related to the organization and news about them. So a arts grant program that they were part of, some of their grant making in South Carolina. That's apparently going to be about one of the people from the organization, I guess, is on the list of the 26 most influential people in Chicago that was published earlier this month. Then if they have social media, which apparently they do, they have a Twitter and an Instagram, interestingly. So those are listed there. And they mentioned that their initial contact, they wanted either a phone call or an email. So over here on contact information, you'll have their telephone number as well as their email address, so that you can figure out how to get in contact with them. So that is kind of what a profile looks like. If you're doing these on kind of small batches, you can save them one at a time through a PDF if you want to just save it to your computer. You can also email it to yourself if you are working from somewhere where you're not going to save it directly to your computer. If you're working, I don't know, on a personal laptop and you want to send it to your email so that you can more easily open it on a work computer or what have you, you can send it. Or if you just want to send it to someone else, if you found it, want somebody else to see it, you can send a PDF. The important thing about PDFs that you send is to make sure that you're just being very careful about what does and doesn't show. Like it will show these boxes, but the links might not work quite as well if you're just looking at the PDF as opposed to in the database itself. So if you want a 990, I would save that as its own separate document. Right, so you can do that one at a time as you look at them, or if you're looking at the big search, you can save several at a time. So check a few here, and then we have our tools. So again, if you want to save them directly to your computer, you can download PDFs. If you want to send them to somebody, including yourself, you can email them. Now, there are limits on these. So if you are going to save them, you'll note it asks me if I want to save them as a list or as profiles. Profiles is that long list of information we just looked through for Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly. That is all of those details. Those are profiles. The database has a limit that you can only save 10 of those at a time. You can do that multiple times. So if you wanted to save all 459 of these, you could do that. It would take you 46 goes, but you could. Alternately, if you just want a little bit of information, if you're kind of collecting names to make, a longer kind of list of prospects to look into in more detail later, you can save it as a list. List view gives you what you see on this search screen. List gives you this one line of information, the name, the city, state, country, this tiny bit of financial information, and their grant count. That is list view. So if you just want that, you can do it as list, and that will let you save 100 results at a time. because you're just getting a little bit of information instead of that entire profile about the organization. So that is up to you. 100 at a time, 10 at a time, very little detail, a lot more detail. Just kind of depends on what your workflow is and how that works for you. If you don't like PDFs, you can also save things as a CSV, which you can then save as an Excel file if you need to work with it that way. Excel file version can do 100 at a time. It does this one line of information plus some very basic details about their giving. In fact, let me actually just show that to you real quick. So yeah, it's not as pretty as a PDF, but it does give you a tiny bit more information. So you'll get their website if they have one, their email if they have one, um, the basic kind of contact information in addition to this. So the CSV or Excel file gives you a little bit more than the PDF and can be nicer if you're wanting to kind of manipulate it later. Again, that is up to you and your workflow. So that is how the searching works and what a profile looks like. We already mentioned that how the searching works. Again, I will probably, hopefully this video is smooth enough that I can put it online. Does anybody have any questions at this point? There are only a few of you, so if you want to unmute yourselves and say them instead of putting in the chat, I believe I made everybody able to talk. Yeah, so anybody should be able to unmute themselves and speak if they wish, or you can put it into the chat if you have any questions. I'm just kind of nattering here to give people a chance to type if they are interested so that there's not just dead silence while I wait. Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you very much. I will mention, while I have you here as we end up, so Forefront's main page, if you are looking for other events we do, you can go to myforefront.org and go to events and see what else we currently have scheduled. So I know that coming up actually next Tuesday, I always get our calendar kind of confused. We have a Ask a Consultant series where some of our friends from the Association of Consultants to Nonprofits will be talking about how to hire a grant writer or when to do so. So if anybody's interested in that, feel free to sign up for that event. I believe it is also a free event, so no cost associated with it. So I'm hoping to make the recording available. If nothing went wrong on my recording of this, I can, of course, send it to the attendees, no matter whether or not I put it online. So I can certainly send a recording to you if nothing has gone wrong in the making of it as I am talking now. Or if it has gone wrong, I can certainly send you the slides that I used. So I will definitely make sure that some form of follow-up with information about the presentation is available. I hope that is sufficient, Amina. All right, great. Well, so that was Foundation Directory Online Essential. If you didn't get the link out of the chat, of course, feel free to contact the library for it in the future. If there aren't any more questions, I guess I will end this a little early and let everybody have an extra 10 minutes to their day. So thank you very much for attending. I hope this was useful to you. Hope to see you at another event sometime soon. Have a great day.